Yeah, I try to highlight one investment specifically on the long side with each letter. Yeah, RCMT is definitely one of my favorites right now. I really like the management. I think they're really focused on building RCMT into like really like $1 billion company. The two guys that run it, Brad Visie, he's the chairman, but he's essentially, it's kind of like a holding company the way they've set it up.
Because
So
like
he's
a co-CEO, it's like there's no like really see this.
yeah, there's no CEO. They're CEOs of the individual three segments essentially, but I think they call them COOs. But yeah, Brad basically runs all the capital allocation, and he's done a wonderful job over the last 3 years since I think he took over in like 18 or 19. But he's done a wonderful job. He's bought back about 25% of shares since COVID, and he bought 11% of shares back last year when the stock was at one point it was down to like $11 or $12. The CFO Miller, he's been pretty involved in all of the capital allocation decisions as well. And they've kind of like taken the portfolio that they've had and they've tried to move it in a place where they kind of see like the growth coming. So they're positioning a lot of their engineering business around around new energy, the new energy transformation. So a lot around the grid, supporting the grid, biofuels, all that sort of clean energy stuff. They have a little bit of exposure to oil and gas, but not material. And then on the healthcare side, they have had a lot of success with the school systems. So they have contracts with some of the larger school systems in the US, and basically they provide them nurses. And during COVID, obviously this was a big issue, but it's kind of come off a little bit, obviously, as we get out of COVID, and there's availability of nurses is opening back up again, because people didn't want them for them. But they have they also are doing things with like therapists in schools where they actually have where they're placing behavioral therapists, which is a new big trend in schools to have a behavioral therapist at the school. And so that, I think that's going to be a big tailwind for them. They're still really early too on within the school system. So like they're not, they've hit a couple of the big ones, but they're not, they still have a lot of room left that they could expand.
And to be clear, they're a staffing company, right? They have staffing.
Yeah. And it's talent services. So a lot of it is placement, healthcare, and they have an IT business as well. So those are kind of the three verticals.
Yeah,
the healthcare, the IT, and engineering.
So what I remember about this company is because a lot of these, there's other ones like Mastech, MHH, and a few other IT companies that didn't do so hot. TSRI, and RCMT is the one that's doing well. And I think they did a good job really diversifying the business into areas that might not be as sensitive to the economy as other places. And when I had invested in it years ago, when it wasn't a great vol. It was like my payment broke even in it. And they had a lot more exposure to the oil and gas industry. And I think they've really kind of pared that back down too a little bit.
Yeah, they have. They've done a number of different things on that side. They're opening up an office in Germany right now to try to support basically that energy. So Germany, I don't know how much you know about it, but they have a kind of like a really tough energy situation going on over there with the gas pipeline being down and everything. And so there's a number of different energy projects that they're supporting over there. So that could be a material kind of like tailwind for them in a few years. They did an acquisition of a company called Talent Herder, which is more like in the kind of like the technology space. So it's very small, but they're pretty nimble and have shown great capital allocation skills. So I'm willing to see what they can do for the next few years.
The stock right now is 2051. It's come off its lows. I think it was around $10. It had that big spike. Now it's back down, back up again. And the reason I kind of hit my radar, I mean, it hit a recent high along the way here, but if you look at like the growth on the EPS, line here, I'm using Centio right here. So in 2020, they did $1.98. And that was versus 83 cents in 21. That was that big, big move.
Yep.
And the full year 23 looks flat at $1.98. But if you look at the quarterly numbers, they're going to start picking up in Q3.
So, yeah, it's the engineering. Their engineering business is back weighted for this quarter. So they built a pretty significant backlog, but the way that the business works, basically they fill those positions as the projects start coming online. So basically they sold a lot of those, projects, and then they're going to backfill. They're basically going to fill them in 3Q and 4Q. So you have some pretty good visibility that they're going to have a pretty good back half of the year. Yeah, it looks like it. So Q3 starts a trend here of potentially like 6 quarters in a row of earnings per share growth. Yeah.
But so maybe they're going to do a $1.98 this year allegedly, and then another $2.39 in 2024. I mean, I don't think a PE of 15 is unrealistic to have on this company.
Yeah, and if you look at a lot of the competitors in the space, they tend to trade at like kind of like the low teens.
Right.
PE. So yeah, I mean, it's trading at what, like 9 now, maybe, or 8, something like that.
Yeah, and it may be a leader in the industry too. So why can't I get a higher PE than it's,
Yeah, exactly. I think their school contracts are pretty sticky too. So I don't expect those to roll off or anything anytime soon. So yeah, it's definitely it's definitely a high cash flowing business too. I mean, they have a lot of cash flow coming off every quarter, and they've mainly spent a lot of it just buying back shares. But now as the stock's getting more expensive, I would expect them to do something different with it, maybe acquisitions or something like that. So we'll see. I guess this quarter, I think I don't know if they've announced when they report. Do they report? They said, I think it's coming up next week.
I think it is next week, right?
Yep.
The stock's $20 here. It gets a P15. It's a $30 stock. So we'll see if it can, on forward numbers at least. Yeah.
Yeah, they should report into next week. So
cool. All right.